Greetings and welcome to another one of my thoughts upon videos. This time we'll have kind of a sad tale for you guys. Well, at least a sad tale for me, as I was not actually able to finish this game in contrast to what I usually do before making these thoughts upon videos. But more on that a bit later. This is Kallestofeles and this time we shall be looking at a Vreven software title called Hexen Beyond Heretic. So strap yourselves in, get a hot cup of coffee, and I hope you do enjoy. Subjectively on PC as always. Hexen Beyond Heretic is a dark fantasy first-person shooter video game developed by Vreven Software and published by ID Software through GT Interactive Software on October 30th in 1995. It is the sequel to 1994's Heretic and the second game in Vreven Software's Serpent Rider series. We shall be taking a look at a bit more modernized version of Hexen using the Doomsday Engine 2, which is essentially a custom game engine developed to run old Doom, Hexen, Heretic WAD game files, whilst offering all sorts of goodies such as 1080p resolution support, better keyboard and mouse controls, gamepad support, smoother graphic renderer and much more. If you're in it for some serious nostalgia though and wish to have the game render in its original blocky resolutions, then that is an option for you as well. I prefer to go with smoother option this time. It is also worth noting that the Doomsday Engine is natively available on both Linux and Windows operating systems, so no one on the PC market should feel left out and the game works fine on both setups. The only real drawback to running it on Linux is that there are some issues with how Doomsday Engine handles music for the old games. For whatever reason on Windows it works right out of the box, but on Linux there is no music in the game whatsoever. I am sure that there is a fix out there somewhere for it, but honestly, after trying to figure it out for half an hour, I cannot be bothered anymore. I ran the game halfway on Linux and then switched over to Windows version for some musical gameplay. The story of Hexen goes something like this. Following the tales of Disparil's defeat in the Heretic game, yeah, I butchered that name nicely, Hexen takes place in another realm, Kronos, which is besieged by the second of three Serpent Riders, Korax. Three heroes set out to destroy Korax and the player assumes the role of one such hero. Throughout the course of his quest, the player travels through elemental dungeons, a wilderness region, mountainside cemetery, a large castle and finally a necropolis. The gameplay of Hexen starts off with a selection of three different character classes: Fighter, Barutus, a Cleric, Parias, or a Mage, Daedalon. Each character has unique weapons and physical characteristics, lending to an additional degree of variety and replay value to the game. The Fighter focuses on close-quarter physical attacks with more focus on items as his fists, an axe, a hammer and a greatsword. He is also the toughest and fastest out of the three characters. The Mage focuses on long-range attacks and spells, which are counterbalanced by the fact that he is the slowest and the weakest of the bunch. He uses his magic wand, an ice spell, a lightning spell and a heavy-duty staff called the Blood Scourge. The Cleric is a middle ground character and frankly the most interesting one to play as. He uses a mace, a serpent staff, a firestorm spell and mother of all weapons, the BFG equivalent in this game, the Wraith Verge, which shoots out a bunch of ghosts who upon hitting a wall or an enemy spread out and start killing any enemies nearby. What makes this even more effective is that once a ghost is done with its victim, it goes after another one, and that can go on for quite a while. There are also usable items in this game, which functions change according to the character you play as, such as the Flechette, which is essentially a gas bomb. For an example, a mage will set a bomb and it will simply explode where it was placed after a certain amount of time. Cleric's Flechette will explode in a cloud of gas, dealing damage over time to nearby enemies. The Fighter's Flechette will be thrown explosive instead of a stationary bomb-style item. Hexen's level design and layout play out as a hub-and-spoke design, meaning that generally you have a hub world which has certain requirements or puzzles for you to solve, and then you have spoke worlds connecting to the hub, where you usually find the parts of the puzzle or solutions to some. Expect a lot of backtracking should you decide to join its world, but more on that a bit later. Also, once you solve the hub world's puzzle, you will have to fight a boss. Upon defeating it, you will get a teleport to another hub and the cycle continues. Regarding the presentational side of Hexen, there's not really much to talk about, as it is your typical 90s tomb clone done right. Luckily, this also spawned a sequel, Hexen 2, but more on that another time. The audio is good and the music is good as well for its time. It definitely rings the nostalgia bell for me, with all those growling sounds that enemies make and all the wall running while slamming on the spacebar, hoping to find that last secret area, whilst your character making sounds like he was trying to bang the damn walls. Yeah, good times. Not that I miss any of those wall-hugging 90s FPS games, but good times nonetheless. Before I cover my experience with going through the game itself, there is a disclaimer I would like to make for anyone thinking of playing through the Hexen. Do not pick the mage. The mage might seem like an awesome choice at first. You get a long-range weapon which doesn't take any mana, plus your third spell named Arc of Death is the second best spell in the game, dealing massive damage over time whilst looking cool as hell. But just don't. You will be spending 80% of the game with your first weapon and the other 20% of the game with the Arc of Death. Reason behind it, your second spell, which freezes enemies, I call it the cold high five, is absolutely useless. Most of the time you're fighting in tight corridors and your cold spell freezes enemies, meaning that their cold figures will be blocking your shots. Plus, the cold spell does very little damage unless you melee with it. Also, your so-called ultimate weapon, the Blood Scourge, has some sort of messed up auto-aim feature which cannot be toggled off, meaning that you ideally want to use the last weapon when fighting hordes of enemies, as it uses ridiculous amounts of mana, but the downside is that the Blood Scourge auto-aim directs his shots in the most useless paths possible, at least most of the time, and it is really not reliable. Just compare it to the Wraith Verge for an example, which really doesn't give a shit where you shoot it as long as it has enemies nearby it, as the ghost will find the enemies even through the walls and take care of them themselves. So long story short, with Mage you'll be stuck with 2 weapons for the majority of the game, as the other 2 are just bare bones almost useless. With Cleric and Warrior, the other weapons are way more useful and you will get a better experience with them overall. Right. That out of the way, let's talk about what it was like going through the game. First level of the game is awesome and it nicely sets the mood for the rest of the game ahead. Too bad that it doesn't tell you right from the bat how excruciatingly hard the puzzles are going to be. No, really. This is not your ordinary puzzle FPS game. This is a freaking mind game search fest against the developers. First level, as said, is great. Then you will encounter your first hub world, the 7 portals. This one has a very good pace, and if you look carefully enough and remember exactly where is what and what does what, and you understand the logic behind it, then you should have no troubles completing it at all. If you get stuck, however, and get no progress for about an hour or so, then just stop right there. Either continue with a walkthrough or stop playing the game, as it will get extremely ridiculous right after the first hub world level. And trust me, your nerves are worth way more than that. Also, at this point, you are introduced to the game's most annoying enemy of all time, the Centaur. At first glance, they look harmless enough, but don't let that fool you. Soon, they will gain a skill to start shooting blue orbs at you, and this is when the game gets really hairy. So, onto the second hub world, the worst that this game has to offer. It is so cryptic and lacking feedback that I'm sure that I managed to grow a few grey hairs whilst running through it. Dark caves and half-a-meter holes placed in the most awkward of places where you must go are no strangers to this hub. This is where at one point you definitely need to get a walkthrough, otherwise good luck. After the second hub, the rest of the game feels like the first level again. Puzzles start to make more sense again, and rarely do you encounter an out-of-this-world solution to what you must do or where you must go. Sadly, they do exist from time to time, and they do ruin the whole flow and experience quite a bit. And by out-of-world solution, I do not mean like it's a little awkward. No, I mean it's pretty much batshit crazy. Imagine this, you're stuck in a hub where you've done everything imaginable, but cannot access the last key which leads to the end boss room. Yeah, enjoy. That's the hub world 5, also where I had to stop playing. The solution was that there is a hidden wall which you need to use to open up, and you do not get anything from that room that's useful. Oh no, you will get a message that something has happened in another spoke world. Cool. So there's a hidden door, which is not indicated by anything, not even a different hue to the door, which you need to use in order to progress. And this game has a lot of those. Hidden door takes you closer to completing the game moments, so beware. But why did I stop then, as I was already in Hub World 5, and the only final boss levels to go? Well, I finally got the key to the boss room. I entered it, killed everything in sight, saved the game, and after the slaughter, well, nothing happened. Searched around, there were no secrets. Nothing to shoot, nothing to use, even my inventory didn't have anything useful. Oh yeah, and the doors to this room were permanently shut now. So after spending 15 minutes doing nothing spectacular in the room, I looked up a walkthrough, and what do you know? It clearly states everywhere not to save your game within that room. Rather use another save game slot altogether, as this part of the game is prone to bugging out, leaving your save game useless. That's when I stood up and said, fuck this piece of shit, not even my nostalgia for you is worth going through all that mind-numbing spacebar humping pile of crap again. So, to sum it up, Hexen is definitely a blast from the past, and a good one, at least for me. I have a really soft spot when it comes to the 90s first-person shooters, and there's just something really special about them and Hexen in particular. Some charm of sorts which is lost nowadays. Probably it's the nostalgia speaking, because as I just explained, the issues with the game did make it a big ass to play. If you're somewhat interested in giving Hexen a go, then I would say get the Doomsday Engine. It's way worth the effort of setting up, and it is the definitive way right now to experience this gem from the past in my mind. Shall leave the link in the description box below if you're interested in that. Just note that you will need the original hexen.wat files to fire it up. It is also probably a good idea to get some sort of walkthrough ready in your browser for those not so brilliant puzzle moments that you will encounter. But if you are one of those geniuses who managed to complete it without using a single hint, then my hat is off before you. And with that in mind, I would like to thank you all very much for watching yet another one of my Thoughts About videos, which is kind of turning into some sort of amateur video review series, I guess. But I still don't like the review word, as it oozes professionalism, and that I am definitely not when it comes to reviewing games. Anyways, that being said, I would like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you will have a merry hexing season. Bye bye.